Men Seagulls, Lockie Smith, the scoop is back, and let's go through the best player on this team, Josh Allier.
Oh, Josh Aloye, hey? I just think that he's not going to be as good as last year. We've got Sipley who stepped up. We've got Paseka. And I mean, after a couple of weeks in, I think he's coming back about round five. We could have Matt Lodge in the team as well. So unless Gerbo's playing prop and Alloy's playing like 50 minutes a lock, I just can't see like a usual expected pathway for something to happen for him. So bit of a drop.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on Manly in general this year? Where do you see them coming? Is it more just based around injuries again?
I mean, it's always going to be based on injuries to those superstar players, and that superstar player being mostly Tom Trbojevich's hamstrings. If he can stay reasonably fit, I think Luke Brooks is a pretty solid signing. I think it will free up DC a little bit, and they have the potential to be a pretty good attacking team again this year. Not 2021 super attacking Manly during the six again epidemic, but I think they could go all right and move into the top eight if they do stay fit.
Definitely. Jakey Arthur, we won't talk about until there's a few injuries. Lukey Brooks coming over. How do you think he's going to go fantasy wise and obviously footy wise too?
Footy wise, I'm actually pretty excited to see what he'll be able to do.
Mm.
Fantasy wise, he's next to DC, one of the biggest long kickers in the game. Brooks might take the edge off DCE's meters as well, but I mean, you can't imagine Brooks gonna be doing crazy amounts of kicking, so I think his base is going to drop a fair bit.
Mm.
And I'd have him sort of in the mid high 30s maybe.
He's probably just going to be a little bit more volatile, won't he? Like he'll have his big attacking games with some lower ones without the base and sort of some missed tackles there for sure. Ethan Bullymore likely to be through the middle, right? Again,
Yeah, I think so. 35 price point. I can't see him getting that or exceeding it, so not particularly interesting.
and even if he was to be named on an edge, guys, like if Schuster was out, Trebojevic was out, actually he scores way better through the middle. We had him on that edge to start of 2 years ago, I think, and it just didn't look the same. Just didn't look like an edge player at all. Just get him tackling, get him running in the middle. Gordon Chan Kum Tong seems like he's in a fight with Jamie Humphreys for that bench hooker role if they use one.
Yeah, well, he came in for a couple of games last year after Croker put up some pretty solid, unexpectedly good scores, and then yeah, cut his minutes down to about 60 and played about 20 off the bench. So, I mean, he's cheap, but he needs to be starting, and I don't see him starting. Please don't buy bench hookers. He's Sonny Luke, that's 50K more expensive.
Yeah. Lockie Croker was the stats there. I think over a six or seven game stretch, he was the best hooker in fantasy. So there you go.
It was crazy. Hey, all the others were dropping, and all of a sudden, this bloke who was always this perennial 40 average guy, all of a sudden started outscoring the rest. It was great. Peak
Origin, hey?
fantasy.
What it does. All right, DCE absolutely brained it at the back end of last year. Ended up a 64 average, which is incredible. What are your thoughts on him to start the year? If they start well, how do you think that he's going to go?
I think he'll score well if they do perform well. I just think that it's a little bit like the Hines situation, but without the appealing draw and without the 70 average. So
Mm,
I do see a little bit of regression down to below the 60 mark. That average is pretty much as high as he's averaged ever, I think. So to be honest, I don't really see him matching that. And with Brooks coming in, potentially taking a little bit of responsibility off his shoulders, I just see him moving back into the pack a little bit.
definitely. Ben Condon, he's one of those fringe guys. He needs a lot of injuries, in my opinion. Lockie Croker, we generally spoke about him, but potential for losing some minutes. Had a bit of a career year for him there. Zach Fulton at 250, not expected to play either. Did have a couple games last year. Is that right?
I think he had one or two.
Yeah.
We talked about him more in preseason when it's like, oh, he's come over from I can't remember who now, and
Mm,
was it Cows?
not
I
sure.
can't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think he'll be relevant this season.
Ruben Garrick at 639, the 46 and a half average last year, which was awesome. Looks like he's going to play center this year, right?
Yeah, well, we don't fully know what to expect seeing him at center. We'd have to expect tries go down. He's a winger or a fullback when Turbo's injured, and tries will probably go down at center.
What do you,
His his base was all right, especially because he's still got the goal kicking. But it's sort of hard to nail down a final number, isn't it? Because I mean, he scored 19 and then 100 in back-to-back weeks at center. So what are we going to get?
yeah, I still remember that week. Yeah, that was probably the one week of the year that everyone was in my DMs giving me shit because I didn't go for him. And they're all gloating about their 100. It was an incredible performance, that's for sure. That right side, it was like it felt like that one game felt like the back end of the year. That last sort of 3 or 4 games with Kohler and DCE and Olakau'atu just absolutely going nuts. They'll have those games for sure, and he'll be a part of those. But yeah, probably more volatile at center, you'd say. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think his consistent scores will be towards the 30s now rather than the 40s with a try. So
But
yeah,
it's just
one to not start with, I'd say, and just watch.
because it's just him coming out of trouble is where he does a lot of his good work, isn't it? Like coming out their
Yes.
end. For sure. Yeah, so a bit of talk about Jamie Humphrey. So I suppose if there was an injury to Croker, then sounds like he could be fighting for some minutes. So at 230, much more of an interesting pick than Gordon is at this stage. Tolu Kola. So 490K, obviously, that's gone up a fair bit where he's averaged at and priced at based on that finish to the year at fullback. He had a really shocking start at center last year. Is there any space for him to be like a 40 plus guy with some improvement, some confidence coming off the back end of last year?
I mean, with having two solid halves and some good form at the back end of the year, even though it wasn't the same position, I guess with his speed, there's always going to be attacking weapons, and he has potential to do well. But the thing is, you take away those two monstrous games
Mm.
at fullback, and the rest of the season was pretty much a 30 average,
Ugh.
or at center, and he's priced 5 points above that. So you would have to be pretty keen to jump on Kohler. I know center's pretty dire, but just don't completely get sold by those late season games that were at fullback.
Yeah. Carl Lawton always scores so well, doesn't he, when he plays? But unfortunately, he keeps getting injured, the poor fella. So is he coming into season fresh, or is he looking to be a little bit away as well from injury?
I haven't heard of any injuries for him, so I'd expect he'd be in the mix if Schuster doesn't start the year. I
Mm.
mean, you'd think that there's a good chance Ben Travojevic might start, as scary as that is for fantasy coaches. Lawton might have an opportunity, or surely they just use Bullimore as a middle from now on, right?
Yeah, I think that has to be the play with Carl. I am still waiting on Mr. Brian Sini with NRL Physio to drop his injury big injury list thing that he
Oh,
goes
how good
through in
was
the
that
next few
last
days.
year? How good.
Yeah, so I'll know more about all of them and where they're at because he hasn't posted about everyone there. Actually, no, that's right. Oh no, 22 season. Yeah, ACL in 22, June 7. Um,
Second
Injury
year back,
update.
bounce
I'll
back.
have I'll have a look at him. Where'd he go? Round 20, he got injured his calf. Oh no, it was Blackton. Anyway, I'll have a look while you're talking. We'll find out. But anyway, if he pops up somewhere around there, we know the type of pedigree he has. Matt Lodge, I forgot that he got injured ACL anyway. He's going to be out for a good while. But when he comes back, he's of potential interest, but definitely getting older because his PPM in this side with a lack of forwards was really, really good when he came over. He was their main guy.
Yeah, well, he really came along and was being hyped up even as potential option. I know I jumped on in Supercoach and then he immediately got injured, which was unfortunate for him. But yeah, I mean, he's priced below 500. I'd expect he starts a little bit slow, but I mean, I think it's Sipley coming back from a pec tear as well. So if Sipley is sort of struggling to get into the season a bit, and Lodge comes in and starts doing okay. He could potentially be the starter and Sipley be the bench PPM guy, but it just happens. It just has to be thrashed out, I think. Matt Lodge in casualty ward supposed to be back about round 5, which I mean isn't super early, but it's not as long as you might expect given that it was pretty late in the year that he got injured. So he's one to watch and wait on, I think. He always is a little bit of a risk jumping on guys just coming off that significant knee injury because there's performance issues.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they've got LOA with shoulder from round one, as well as Lawton with shoulder as well that he did. But so yeah, it's gonna be hard to even see him getting anywhere near a start, which is what we need anyway. Olakwatu, 715. Any interest in him?
He's a funny one, isn't he? He loves his tries. He's a little bit like a Hudson Young. He scores quite a lot of tries, has some really big boom scores, and then can score a few 35s and 40s in there with for you as well. But um, I really hope that this year there's potential for him to have a little bit more consistency. If the team stays fit, they have a little bit more balanced halves. Maybe he can get some more consistent ball and some good attack while just I don't know, smoothing out a little bit because he's been in Origin contention and talks like a bit like Kolomatangi on that fringe. Maybe this is the year that he wants to say, "Hey, I want to step up. I want to cement a spot in that New South Wales side."
Oh, I would not want to tackle. He's one of the guys in the league I would not want to tackle,
Oh, well,
especially
he
like,
flattened Olam.
yeah,
That's crazy.
we us two smaller fellas, we'd be out in the edges, and he'd be the one guy
Oh,
that I don't want to
I'd
see.
be running away from, I would be running for my life.
Oh, he's such a big human. Anyway, and that palm is out. We get palmed in the face for sure. Brad Parker. So fair bit going on here with him injury wise, but looks like moving back to the back row to make way for Ruben Garrick. I think because they have a low amount of stocks in that back row. But yeah, if we see him in a starting side at some point, maybe. He's always been that sort of. He's always worked hard, right? Just doesn't have that super amount of talent.
Yeah, well, he has his fans, especially in the Discord, but I think that we might see a little bit more reserve grade for him this year. It would be fun to see him back row, though. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Taniela Paseka, he had a really, really nice year for him. Was plagued by injury for the last part of the season, and they really needed him to play given the injuries that they did have, especially when Lodge went down as well after bringing him over. But 569, do you see room for growth with him and some big minutes?
I think there is definitely some potential, but it's sort of all narrative and not a lot of
Mm,
definites, especially when Lodge comes back at an awkward time if he does start off well.
yeah.
So for me, he's not one I'm particularly looking at, but just maybe someone I'll keep half an eye on, chuck a star on, and check on every 2 weeks, sort of a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Jackson Barlow there at 406K. He had a cracking start for the Roosters last year and then fell away. He was strangely the only player in that team that was making money and was scoring well, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting actually. You had like your Jackson Paulos and your Isaac Thompsons last year on those right wings with a bit of inconsistency. Paulo worked for a bit, just didn't didn't perform in the back end of the year, and that's why they've gone after Dom Young to lock down that spot. But he's because of that all right start, he is 400k already as a
Yeah.
winger, and I mean it's a bit of a downgrade of a team. So for me, he's not somebody I'm particularly excited to look at. I mean, 29 and a half average. You'd need to average high 30s to be interesting, and I just don't think he'll do that.
Yeah. And then Jason Saab, 35K, more expensive, more of the same.
Yep. He loves
Awesome.
to run 150 meters, score one try, and do nothing else.
Exactly. Joshy Schuster, he's dividing myself and basically everyone else at the moment. Very, very high ownership. Lots going on with him with injuries and attitude and earning too much money. I don't know, one of the two. But Joshy, what are your thoughts on him?
Look, I think if he's named in round one, it's going to be very tough to go against him. He's pretty highly owned. His back row scores are way better than his half scores, and he's priced under 30. So even if he doesn't, I guess, fully play 80 for some reason, he's still got enough value in him to be very interesting. If his downside is decent value and his upside is 15 points, that's somebody that's really tough to leave out. So I mean, if he's named with his half dual as well, I'm pretty happy just to slot him into my bench. And if something goes wrong, well, most of the others had the same problem.
Yeah, for sure. Are you saying downside might be like a 34, 35?
Yeah, there's not a lot of scope for it to go drastically wrong unless he's so poor attitude that, I mean, he gets dropped or something.
Yeah, which happened plenty last year, and yeah, for sure. I know. I suppose that there's sorry, there's room for him to be like a 50 odd minute guy, isn't there? For sure. If he hasn't been training much, if the attitude's not there, if Burbo's on the bench or something like that, right? And are you still taking him at 50 odd minutes?
Not at 50 minutes. He'll probably be low 30s at that. Um, if Burbo is on the bench, I will definitely have to think twice.
Okay.
But if they don't have like a noted edge player on the bench and they've got like a Bullimore there who might play mostly in the middle and then 10 on the edge every now and then, if Schuster's not fully fit or something like that, I'd be a lot happier to go him. Burbo on the bench would scare me a little bit, just given how many options we have in that position. If we had somebody with that much value in center and there was that much risk, I wouldn't even hesitate to buy them. But
Hmm.
just because of the position and how many other alternatives we can go to, if there does look like there's going to be risk, I'm happy to jump off. And if there isn't that much risk, I'm happy to go him, especially with how high his ownership is.
Yeah, for me, there's not enough information at the moment. The trial, if he plays one, will help with that. If he looks good, if he's working hard in defense, I think that, yeah, I think I'll take him too. But I just need more at the moment. Toffa Sipley. So yeah, based on that casualty award, isn't injured. I don't know. A few people were saying that he was fairly reputable. So yeah, I don't know. If he's there again, 622K, had a cracking year. Probably not one to go for at that price.
Yeah, the back end of last year, he turned into a bit of a weapon actually,
Mm.
scoring at a fantastic rate. He was up there with your Terrell Mays as your Payne Haas's as your monster PPM guys. But he'd have to match that and then add more minutes into it in order to be value. And given that they've got Lodge potentially coming back at some point and just already at a 45 really awkward price point. Not somebody I'm interested in looking at.
All right, Tommy Talau, the big one for the rest of this video, that's for sure. At 265, the dual position still moves to a better team for sure. What are your thoughts on him?
Surely, if he gets doing so, surely he has to make some money,
Yeah.
right? Surely. Like we've seen him at the Tigers when the Tigers haven't been that good. At center hasn't scored a little bit better. Wing just does not get the tackle the tries. If he does line up on that left side with a fit Manly team, I could see definite improvement there. How much? I don't know exactly. He's Tommy Talau. He isn't a noted fantasy weapon. But you've got to think with the center duel as well, being very useful for our desperate teams at the moment. If he does line up there, it's going to be pretty tough to say no. It's a really hard one to get around because we know how much he didn't do anything last year, but there is scope for him to have a bit of a bump this season.
Yeah. And just looking at that earlier draw, it isn't as bad as some of the others. You haven't got the Panthers in the first 4 rounds. And I think that first 4 rounds is where we need him to make some of that money. And then we can work out what to do with him in that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 range. So it's definitely not the worst with 4 teams there. That's all apart from the Roosters didn't make the 8. So, if they stayed at a similar way of play, then he could definitely score some tries. But it is going to be on the back of guys like Tommy Trbojevic and Luke Brooks and stuff. If he's on that left side, which it would be right with Saab on the other.
Yeah, I'd expect so.
Okay, yeah, it's actually I don't have the as ill feelings for him as I do for other sort of missed picks I've had. I don't know why. Just looking back, I'm like, it was just a bad decision to pick him up last year. Like, there's some talent there, but the Tigers, like, you look at all their outside backs, and there was like, I don't know, 14 tries between all their wingers and centers. Like, it's something ridiculous for the year. Like, they all
Yeah.
had like 3 or 4 tries max.
And
Um,
Stafford Toa did about a third of them in a month.
yeah, exactly. And he still didn't average over 40 for someone that hit 100 in one game. So Yeah, it's not definitely not going to be the worst pick, and you could pop him in that center spot, but do be aware that there is a 6 or a 5 or a 12 in him for sure. That could work. Ben Trebojevic, if he starts, we're probably picking him, even if there's some risk, right? If he was to get, if even if he was to lose the start, it's probably 25, 30 off the bench. They do seem to like him. He comes up in talks all the time to start. Whenever there's an opportunity, he starts. Like, yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah.
one.
He's somebody that I'm very happy to just slap straight into my team if he does start. He's somebody who, even if he does only get 50 minutes, that's still plenty for him to make money.
Yeah, at 250. Yeah. Jake Trbojevic just seems to be dropping a little bit in average each of the last few years, even with big minutes.
Yeah, I think so. We've seen him switch to prop a couple of times and then lock back in later in the season. I think that we finally could see him start to drop away from being an 80-minute guy. I've got him down for 70 in the pack predictor. He'll play 80 often, but I think there'll be a couple of games where he doesn't play the full one.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to us about Tommy Trbojevic, mate. So fantasy wise, he only has that one ridiculous year, and the other ones aren't elite tier. Got a lot of people talk to me, obviously, after that scrimmage the other day where he apparently brained it, scored 2 tries, 20 minutes. Ben Hunt was wearing a cap. So how crazy was that scrimmage? We
Oh,
won't
it's
know,
good,
but
eh?
Tom's a
It's
freak,
good.
obviously. But tell us about him and why he might not be someone to start with.
Look, we saw what he did last year and how he started. He got priced up 100K and people were still talking about him because it's like a recency bias. 2021 was a little bit fresher in the memory. And then he started off and did not much. I think he had one game where he scored 16 with a try.
Mm,
And although we know and love the turbo that can run around and score 60s, 70s, and 80s, he's also one of these guys who can drop a 30 on you and you're not surprised. So priced at 45, no, 47, sorry. He's just a lot of coin to spend up when there's a lot of upside in guys cheaper than that, like Pappenhausen and Jaden Campbell, or really gunning up with somebody with a really good base with the goal kicking like Ponga. So he's a really awkward guy to buy because you're counting on him being a gun if you do pick him up. So he's either a waste of a trade or a risk. And that's really tough to sort of know for certain round one. So it's better to just look and wait and see what version of Turbo you do actually get and pick him up later if he does do well.
for sure. But if people were to have him in their side, would you tell them to take him out, or would you just be like, good luck? It could pay off.
Oh, I'd want to say good luck because I mean, it'd be great to see good Turbo, but I would probably say look for someone a bit more certain. There's a lot of money tied up in that. Drop it down to a Campbell or something and use that 200K to fix your centers or something.
All right, guys, you know who to blame now. If he comes out and drops at 80 and Scoop told you not to go for him, then that's where the blame lies. I won't tell you to get him out of your side, just because you know what he can do. But I'm definitely looking at him a little bit more in Supercoach than I am in fantasy. All right, probably to finish now. It's just Corey Waddell at 545, averaged 40 last year with the Dogs. Moves over here, probably pack tiny bit better. Obviously, Dogs probably the worst at the moment. So played a lot between edge, a fair bit on the edge, and then a bit through the middle. Do you expect more middle here?
I would expect more middle, but if they do have worries with Schuster's fitness, maybe he's the guy to take sort of 20-25 middle and 20-25 edge. But I don't think he's somebody with a lot of solid appeal priced at 40 from the bench.
Definitely. All right, let's move to the pack predictor there. You've got Paseka at 50, Sipley at 45. That all seems very fair there. You got LAA with 30 off the bench, and Corey Waddell with 25, Bullymore with 20 there, Schuster at 70, Olakuatu at 80, Chen Kantong splitting 20 with Croker's 60 there with Trbojevic at 70. Any further thoughts on your pack predictor, or is just kind of should be how it ends up, really?
Yeah, it's going to depend on Schuster really, and then the rest will just fit in until Matt Lodge comes back.
Yeah, for sure. And then he yeah, he takes one of those guys for sure. So really value wise, you're only looking at Schuster in this team in the pack.
Yeah, whoever's on that edge, if it's Schuster or Burbo, there's potential value. 70-minute Schuster at his PPM potentially can still be 10 points of value. If he's 80, wheels up, fantastic. If it's 50, 60, then it starts to get problematic. Um, it's just hard to go against if he is starting and there is a instant bench edge. But yeah, do watch out for it to be a Burbo instead of a Bullymore or a Burbo instead of a Chan Kum Tong potentially.
For sure. And we're looking at their draw now, guys. They don't have a bye all the way through till 13. They've got one in 17 and 22. So probably looking likely you either start with one of those guys. If things happen through the middle, you might be looking at sort of that round 6-ish after Panthers, or again in round 14 when they play the Panthers as well. Hopefully there's a couple of restings which might help. But if you're buying them in 14 after their bye, they play that important round 14, 16, 19, and 20. And then you're probably selling them after that anyway. So yeah, probably a couple of times where you can buy Eagles players as an overall player. As a head-to-head guy, then they are missing round 17 and round 22. So yeah, kind of an average kind of team at that point. But yeah, any further thoughts on the Eagles, mate? I probably have them near the bottom of the 8. Obviously, could be out of it if things go wrong, but sort of that 7 or 8 if things go well.
Yeah, I reckon so too. I sort of think about them as a finals team in my mind, and then I wonder who has to drop out.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have, as I sort of mentioned previously, I think we're going to have like a really strong 4 or 5 top teams. Then we're going to have about another 5 teams that are all in that next bracket, and then we're going to have the drop off. So they could be anywhere from like about 6th to 10th, and I wouldn't be surprised if they landed anywhere in that range.
Definitely. There you go, guys. Thank you for dropping into this one. If you haven't looked at the private group yet, get around that one. It's filling up quickly, which is good. But yeah, get your name in there. Plenty of fun across the entire season, keeping you involved and scoring great and averaging and ranking well and winning your head-to-heads. Easy as that. See you guys.